There was an idea
to bring together a group of remarkable people.
to see if we could become something more.
So when they needed us, we could fight the battles.
That they never could.
Before creation itself, there were 6 singularities. Then the universe exploded into existence, and the remnants of these systems were forged into infinity stones. These stones can only be brandished by beings of extraordinary strength. These carriers can use the stone to mow down entire civilizations like wheat in a field.
In time, you will know what it's like to lose. Feel so desperately that you're right, yet to fail all the same. Dread it, run from it, destiny still arrives.
Evacuate the city. Engage all defenses. And get this man a shield.
Let's go.
The entire time I knew him, he only ever had one goal. If Thanos gets all the Infinity Stones, he can wipe out half the universe.
The end is near. When undone, half of humanity will still exist.
So I have no clue if this is going to go up before or after the spoiler cast, which on top of the fact that the whole planet is likely to have seen the film multiple times before this video even comes out, makes a non-spoiler video feel doubly redundant even at the time of this writing, which is only 2 days after global release. But bases need to be covered, so I'ma do it anyway. For the sake of expedience, and just because I want to be experimental, I'm going to tackle this less like a review, and more like, well, exactly what it says in the title. If you want to know what I think about the movie as a complete piece without having to watch the spoiler video, it's great. Everything you're not expecting in terms of twists and turns, but at the same time everything you are expecting in terms of laughs, thrills, action, and quality character interaction. Far and away the darkest, heaviest, and most desperate and hopeless movie in this continuity, on top of the most artistically shot and least friendly to non-fans or casual viewers who aren't totally invested in these characters. Now, here's a brief, spoiler-free rundown of those characters, or at least the big names who I think are worth talking about individually, and what I see as the descending order of importance to this specific film. If you haven't seen the movie somehow and are just curious about how much justice gets done to your fave, or how much you should manage your expectations for screen time, consider this a bit of a primer. If you have seen the movie, let me know what you think of the handling of your favorite characters in the comments, but please keep it spoiler-free. Cool, cool. Let's go. Thanos is the main character of the movie. The only thing that confidently stops me from calling him the film's de facto protagonist is that we are understandably not locked into his POV. He's the one driving the story and being proactive, he's the one with the crucible, debatably the one who both loses and gains the most, and while the movie is careful to keep you from fully empathizing with him on account of he's an insane person, he's ridiculously compelling to watch. Josh Brolin gets to give a layered, human, vulnerable performance, and the effects used to give him life are so good, given the design they have to work with, that they genuinely look like a makeup job half the time. Totally worth the wait and the hype, easily one of the best superhero movie villains ever, and I only stop from calling him the best because he's such a different animal to your Killmongers and your Jokers that I don't even think a comparison is fair. Thor is the only character who can give Thanos a run for his money in terms of going through the most crap, and fittingly, he's the singular hero who I come out of the theater most impressed with. I've always liked Hemsworth as Thor, but I feel like I've been waiting to actually connect with his character on the level I do all the other Avengers, and coming just short of that through every movie to feature him. Ragnarok got the closest by letting Hemsworth just let loose and basically play himself for 90% of it, but Infinity War is what finally, truly nails it. This movie is the best that Thor has ever been portrayed in this franchise, period, full stop, no contest. And I mean visually, writing-wise, and especially acting-wise. It only took 7 years, but I think the Russo brothers finally give Hemsworth exactly the right kind of meat to chew on, that even in a cast of dozens, Thor is finally allowed to be the highlight. Yeah, my boy Steven is a pretty big deal in this movie, and while I already really liked him coming off of his own film, like Thor, he's portrayed better in this one by a large margin. While we got a sliver of him in Ragnarok, this movie lets us know fully that Steven's gone through a pretty profound change after the end of his own film. Not only are his powers far more visually and physically impressive than that movie, his vocabulary and demeanor are also notably different, and of all the heroes, he comes the closest to maybe giving Thanos a proper fight and having a hold on the situation. Feels kinda weird putting Gamora here, given that I'm pretty sure most of the characters further down this list actually beat her out in terms of screen time. But her role in the actual story is massively impressive, and like Hemsworth, Zoe Saldana is giving her most nuanced and emotional performance as this character. She actually spends a lot of the movie away from the other Guardians, and unfortunately what she does means you're going to be disappointed if you wanted her to be doing lots of action. Honestly, I don't think she gets to throw a single punch in the film. Still a remarkable part of the story, and only below Thor and Strange on this list because of actual minutes on screen, if I'm being honest. People who complain about Tony Stark being overexposed and taking over the movies he shows up in have nothing to worry about here. While Tony does feel like a main character, he never feels like the main character, even though he is still characteristically trying to call all the shots. Tony feels like he's matured and grown even from just his brief appearance in Spider-Man Homecoming. By which I mean, despite what I just said, Tony never feels like a control freak or like he's being overly dismissive. He butts heads with the characters you would expect him to butt heads with, but his mind always seems to be on keeping everyone else centered and focused before it's on making power moves or soaking up attention. RDJ has also somehow added even more to his portrayal of the character, and there's a single line delivery toward the end of this film that I think might be some of the best acting Rob's ever done in this part. The armor is nicely impressive, and overall the movie keeps up the tradition of making sure viewers only ever get to see Tony Stark on the absolute worst days of his life. He's not the only one, either. I know, kinda cheating to lump all these guys together, especially since they spend most of the movie split up, but there's just too many of them to go into individually, and a lot of them I don't have much to say about. Drax and Mantis are exactly who they were in Guardians 2, comic relief with a pinch of pathos, but mainly just joke machines. Teen Groot is just kinda there until we get into third act territory, wherein he gets one killer character moment and a lot of awesome action beats afterward. Nebula is a pretty tiny part in the grand scheme, but scenes with her will still have you cringing in horror in your seat. Rocket Raccoon is one of the members with more to do, and displays a shocking amount of growth, maturity, and empathy while still believably being the same character from the previous movies. And personally, I think my favorite moment in the whole movie is just a dialogue scene between Rocket and Thor. It continues to be an everlasting shame that Bradley Cooper is hardly acknowledged among the rest of these films' cast for his spectacular vocal performance. And then there's Star-Lord. Oh boy, are most audiences going to be frustrated with Star-Lord. Once again, we're dealing with the same character as before, which means he's all heart in all of the best and worst ways. He's rash, extremely emotional, and narrow-minded, and with the stakes being as high as they are, Infinity War has those traits lead to natural and devastating consequences, even if the writing and Pratt's acting makes it so you can totally sympathize with what he does. If only one character is going to suffer a huge amount of earned audience blowback after this movie, though, expect it to be Quill. I specifically say Bruce Banner and not the Hulk for, well, reasons that will be clear in the movie. He's going through a thing. Bruce's role is actually a touch smaller than I thought it would be, but that's partially just because of my assumptions based on misleading marketing. If Thor Ragnarok felt like Act 1 of a 3-part arc for Bruce, then Infinity War is an effective Act 2. Wherein something that happens early on leads to another dramatic shift in Bruce and Hulk's dynamic that further humanizes the latter and once again gives the former ample opportunity to prove his fortitude and heroism even without having to get all green and muscly. The big thing Bruce is missing in this movie is any extended, meaningful interaction with other characters, which is a tad unfortunate. Viz and Wanda spend almost all of their screen time together, so it's pointless to separate them. You know, I don't think there's a better testament to the MCU's knack for characterization than Vision. This guy has gotten maybe a total 20 minutes of screen time across 2 previous movies, and yet I still feel tremendously for him as the living MacGuffin of this one. Similar to Gamora, it sucks that Vision gets hardly any action stuff, especially given his power set. Wanda gets some of the more impressive action beats in the 3rd act, and Elizabeth Olsen portrays the character as having matured quite a bit since the last time she was on screen. I've heard the odd complaint about Olsen having dropped Wanda's Sokovian accent, which I don't agree with, but is there for you to spot at your leisure. Peter Parker's role in this movie is comparable to that in Civil War. His rapport with Tony has changed in small but perceptible ways since Homecoming, and like that movie, this one plays up Peter's youth and innocence to tragic effect. Lots of great lines, lots of great action beats, and a fair amount of screen time, but Tom Holland doesn't get too much pathos to work with till the very, very end. If you told me Steve Rogers was going to be this low on this list before I saw the film, I wouldn't have believed you. But yeah, Cap is really more of a minor character here, to say nothing of his immediate crew of Falcon, Winter Soldier, Black Widow, and War Machine, who all get so little meat to chew on that I'm just going to lump them in with Steve. All have some decent lines and great action beats, but they're all also just the corner of the movie that has the least going on. The only reason I even put them above the next spot instead of lumping them in there too is some token growth or relationship moments between them and some other characters. They really are a shockingly small part of this film that doesn't provide me with a lot to say. Finally, let me tell you, the real magic tricks in this movie aren't Doctor Strange, but rather the marketing effectively making this movie look like a Black Panther sequel of sorts. Wakanda is a major location, and T'Challa, Okoye, M'Baku, and Shuri get plenty of moments to show off their chops, but any actual arc for them just doesn't have the time to show up. And that's about it as far as I can sum up. Definitely subverted my expectations for how dynamics and screen time would be parceled out. If you haven't seen the movie yet, let me know if you're surprised by the order in which I ran down these guys. And if you have, go ahead and check out some of the more in-depth story thoughts from me and my friends in the spoiler cast. Like and subscribe if you got any enjoyment from this video and you want to keep up with what I do next.